Hey, before we start, I want to talk about We Are Podcast. It is the movement that I started way back in 2015. It is our 9th iteration this year in 2022. If you're in Australia or around Australia or anywhere in the world and you want to come and a reason to come to Australia, to Brisbane, November 9th to the 11th, this year is all focused on growth. It's focused on you as a podcaster getting more listeners, more revenue, and more credibility. Go to wearepodcast.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Ronsley, episode number 308 of Should I Start a Podcast? Did you ever wish you had a second chance at something? Ever wonder what it's like for someone who lives their whole life making sure other people get second chances? Well, today's conversation is with Coss Marte, who was in jail for 6 years. If you haven't checked out Psychology of Entrepreneurship, I have a whole really cool audio documentary on Coss Marte. Go check that out. But Coss was in jail for 6 years, came out to start a business that gives second chances to people that have been to prison. His voice and his mission is entirely focused on that. In this episode, you will learn how Coss got featured on the Ellen Degeneres Show and the journey that someone goes through making sure that his voice is heard. You will also learn how to be spontaneous and roll with the changes, take a deeper look at ConBody and how a convict started a fitness company. We will rethink how you use your voice by using it, and how to learn the foundations of good work ethic, why that's so important. And we'll talk in depth about Coss, what is happening right now, and how he's going to testify in Congress to change laws around the people he serves. All this and more on this week's episode of Should I Start a Podcast? And make sure you listen all the way to the end, because I'll break down this episode to give you 3 small steps that you can execute right now to help you take this listening experience into an execution experience. Also, if you know a business owner podcaster that needs to hear an episode about why a podcast is the best business development tool, please share an episode with them. Pretty please, enjoy the show.
Indicator 1, this is launch control. Please advise when pre-flight checklist is complete.
Indicator 1 to control. Pre-flight is complete. All indicators read green.
This is Should I Start a Podcast? A show for business owners looking for tips, tricks, and ingenious hacks when it comes to growing a business using their podcast. This is your host, Ronsley. He's interviewed more than 1,400 people and has been listened to over 5 million times in 133 countries. A TED speaker, author, and a podcast purist who believes that we can use our voices to grow our business and our influence. You know, because every conversion in any business always happens in a conversation. And now, Ronsley.
It's been a while since we spoke last.
Yeah.
What's changed in your world?
Wow. A lot of things has not really changed, but maybe elevated and, I don't know, come into fruition. Like, I'm starting a cannabis business now. Just a lot more different opportunities. I was featured on the Ellen Show, and that got me so many inquiries and just crazy, just trying to keep up with shit.
Let's start with that. You got featured on the Ellen Show. What was that like?
I was nervous, man. So they basically, I got a direct message, a DM on Instagram from some random guy. This guy is like, he wrote, you get all these random spam messages. So this guy hits me up. He's like, I'm a producer at Ellen Show, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at his profile. It looks like he got 100 followers or some shit. I'm like, nah, shit is fake. You know what I mean? So he's like, King, hop on a call. I would love to talk to you. Yeah. And so I got on a Zoom call. He's like, can I record this? And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so we record for a whole hour. And he's like, I'll get back to you. I'm not going to promise you anything. I got to review it and then get back to you. And so he contacts me the next day. He's like, Ellen, watch, our recording. We want you to fly out, and you have to take 3 COVID tests, before you get here. And it was a whole thing. And I was like, oh shit, this is real. And I flew out the next day to go on the show and made it happen. It was pretty wild.
So you went on the Ellen Show. What was that like from the time you were in the waiting room, in the green room? What was going through your mind? What were you thinking about? And here's someone who's obviously been through some of the harshest conditions that any human can potentially go through. What was going on?
I couldn't believe it. So first of all, they put me in a hotel, right? And then I'm not able to like go out of the hotel. I'm like really quarantined and I'll have to stay in the hotel. I walked around the block a few times, but that was it. Like I didn't visit friends in LA. It was, I had to be secluded because I couldn't take the chance of testing positive or anything. Yeah. So my shit would have been canceled. Yeah. But I met this guy in the bar and we're talking, we're having drinks, and this guy's like, yo, what are you doing over here? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be featured on the Ellen Show, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yo, whatever you do, like, don't hug her. She doesn't like to be hugged. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm just thinking that behind my head when I'm in the green room. Like, all right, what do I do? Do I give a handshake? Do I, give a peace sign? Then as soon as I, walk out on stage, she's like, can I get a hug? And I'm like, oh, shit, I can touch you, And so, there's just so many rumors about all the crazy, media has this perception that she was an evil person because she had this whole scandal with her employees that she was mean and all this shit. And I found her to be really nice. So, yeah.
So you went on the show. What question do you remember being asked?
So I remember, basically the executive producer ran 5 questions behind stage. And then she missed the 5 questions. She was like, yeah, you went into prison, you started this company, blah, blah, blah. But, well, before, so this is crazy because behind stage, he was like, so how do you start ConBody? Talk about that, And I was like, yeah, well, I came up with the conception in solitary confinement. He was like, do not say solitary confinement, because she had this whole controversy about feeling like COVID was like solitary confinement and being in lockdown was a whole issue. So she had all the media going against her behind that shit. And he was like, do not say solitary confinement, because she did an Instagram video and was like, I feel like I'm in solitary confinement, but everybody's like, you're in a fucking mansion in LA. Are you going to compare that shit to a fucking prison? So he was like, keep those words out of your mouth. Say that you were in a cell. So I had to change that. But I practice it so much where I was just reiterating behind stage, all right, and I was so fucking nervous because you got 5 minutes, it's like you make it or you trip up on some shit, and so it was an amazing experience. And I remember her asking me how did you start this? And I just shared what I went through and where I wanted to take ConBody. Yeah. And so I remember saying, I want to be everywhere. I want to franchise this. And so after that, I got so many franchise requests. It's been nuts. It's been crazy.
So how are you dealing with that, right? How long has it been since you were on the Ellen Show? Obviously, everyone's sort of getting to you now. And how are you sifting through that? Because obviously when someone called you to be on the Ellen Show, I'm not even sure whether this is real or not. Yeah. And how are you dealing with that now? Because obviously everyone wants a slice of you in some shape or form. And you got what you asked for. You wanted to franchise it. How are you going about dealing with that?
So my wife helped me a lot. So she was just answering mad DMs, a whole bunch of DMs, a whole bunch of email inquiries. The whole team just bootstrapped, and we just started answering everything. We had over 3,000 messages overnight. We had to seek through it. There was a lot of messages of individuals just wanting to work with us. And I'm like, we're not at that level yet where I could hire 1,000 people that reached out to me asking for a job.
So previously incarcerated people?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So did you capture their details or?
Yeah, I have just a folder just with resumes from all across the country. Jail mail from inmates writing me that saw me on the show. So my thought was my online business is gonna blow up after this shit, And I was like, I gotta withstand the whole demand. So I'm dealing with the developer, making sure the website is not gonna crash on us or whatever. I have this $14 a month virtual online video subscription, but we probably got maybe extra 500 subscribers. And I was like, fuck. For me, it was damn, this shit was bullshit, And so, but then when we started, the days went on and I was getting so many different inquiries, I was like, oh shit, I have my mind thinking I'm going to blow up this way, but, I have now way more opportunities this way. Now we're working inside prisons and there's different hotels contacting us to do partnerships with them, things of that nature. Right. So sometimes you think one opportunity is going to show up on one side, but shit happens on the other.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to do this interview about mainly is using your voice. And the primary reason for that is I think in the world, in general, in the first world, we take for granted that we have a voice and we can use it, because I think in institutions and the way we were brought up told us not to raise our voice. Raising our voice, standing out, someone's going to disagree with us. What if they disagree with us in public? I think we create these issues inside our minds, right? And I think one of the causes I've been involved in since 2016 is ending human and sex trafficking. And I find that these girls who have been trafficked are trying to have a voice, and they, even if they scream for help, there's no one there to hear them. And I'm sure people incarcerated probably feel the same way in a lot of ways. You've been in jail for like 7 years. Is that correct? Did I remember correct? 6 years. What did it feel like at the time? Did you feel silenced? And how has that changed over time?
Yeah, so definitely felt silenced and unheard and unimportant. And, as somebody that's coming out with no college education, I read a lot of books while I was incarcerated, and I know a lot of shit, but coming out, I could have an intellectual conversation with somebody, but they gonna question me, where do you go to school? And something that was a deterrent was that being incarcerated, being Latino in America, and going to raise money anywhere, I was being questioned, how did he learn all this stuff? And I'm I read a lot of shit, and I also got support from different organizations like the Five Ventures that's when they started, when they really didn't have that much support or a voice and nobody really knew about them. I just took advantage of every connection. I showed up and was very consistent. And yes, I took no for an answer and didn't waste my time on those individuals that said no. I just moved on to a person that said yes.
Let's stop there for a second, because there's a lot of advice out there that says don't take no for an answer.
I don't believe that shit. Take no for an answer, because, so basically a quick example is I get these fucking cold calls from Yelp all the time to do advertisement on my business. I'm like, yo, your shit doesn't work for me. Stop calling. You're going to keep calling, trying to convince me when my shit is no. Now you're blocked. I'm not, when I see a Yelp call, your shit is blocked right away. You're not even getting it. So why beat a dead horse? You know what I mean? Go on to the next person that might need your services. So on the street, when I was selling coke and started my delivery service, I started with business cards. So I would go out to random people and be like, hey buddy, do you smoke a little bit of weed? And some of them would be like, all right, I'll take a hit. And then I'll be like, hey, I have a 24-hour drug delivery service. Here's my card. But for those people that were like, no, get the fuck away from me, I'm like, all right, bye. I'm moving to the next one. You know what I mean? I'm not wasting my time on getting that person to say yes.
In a couple of days, you're going to Congress to testify. I find your stories absolutely fascinating. And I wonder whether it's landing for you, the kind of life you're leading right now compared to what it was inside jail, inside solitary confinement. Do you pinch yourself? Do you find it hard to believe? Do you have that where you're kind of going, man, there was a while before that no one was listening to me. I was in this little cell, but now I'm on Ellen. Congress wants to hear from me. Ronsley wants to interview me. All this kind of stuff is happening. Do you find it unreal? Surreal?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm go, and I don't stop and take that time to breathe and realize that, yo, this shit is crazy. There's people that are in my position that have been formerly incarcerated and have done incredible work and have done successful things that I've met. And I've been the person that has been chosen to speak in front of Congress, to be a voice, to advocate for formerly incarcerated individuals and incarcerated individuals. To get I'm meeting Cory Booker, my brother became city council member of all downtown just because we were fucking persistent as fuck to get him in office. But there's also people that didn't do what I did. I got in the subway stations and made announcements. I stopped random people, and had conversations. I just woke up from morning to night just kept stopping people and networking and going to different events and getting the word out there and trying to get on stage and, make noise, and the noise worked.
Hey, this is Katerina Joubert. I'm a creator, podcaster, and maker of amazing videos. I'm on the inside of We Are Podcast members, or as we call it, the Wamily. If you were thinking about growing your business using a podcast and your online presence, come join us on the inside. I would love to meet you. James and Ronsley coach us to get those reoccurring results in our businesses. If you want the roadmap which we all follow to get those results, you can download it by following this link, roadmap.wearepodcast.com. Now, here's Ronsley.
I remember the story of when you got your TEDx talk and how you practiced really hard before you went up on stage, and it sounded like that you winged it, but you practiced a lot. Your work ethic obviously is up there. Let's talk about Congress. What are you going to DC for on Wednesday? And let's start with that, and then we'll talk about how it all came to be.
So I'm going to DC to advocate and testify about how formerly incarcerated individuals should be allowed this equal rights to start their own business as like somebody else that has the right to start their own business. When I started ConBody, I started in the park with no funds. I went from bank to bank, try to pitch investors, and everybody was denying me. When you go into some sort of bank application, they ask you if you've been convicted of a criminal record. When I had to get business insurance, I was operating with no business insurance for a while because, first of all, I was being denied because of my criminal record, or I was being quoted like an enormous, I remember being quoted $30,000 a month. That shit is bullshit. And right now, because we changed policies in New York State, I'm only paying like $500 a month. And that's the normal person, what they pay. You know what I mean? Yeah. Imagine somebody like me, how do I start? How do I get over that barrier? And then finding real estate. Yeah, it was crazy. It was just nuts. So I remember being denied all the time for a space. And I had the funds. I had the customers. So I was operating in the park, renting out these ballet studios. And I'm like, I want to have my own space so we could operate in. I wanted to build it to look like a jail and really brand this shit out. And I remember finding a Craigslist, this Buddhist lady, she had a Buddhist temple, she had a basement, and it was renting it out as an office or whatever. So I went over there. It was super cheap. So I jumped on it. I was like, I'll take it. And then that broker that was showing it to me was trying to convince the landowner not to rent it to me because of my criminal record. And she contacted me and she was like, hey, he's telling me not to rent it to you, but I read your story and I believe in second chances and I want to give you a chance. And so it worked out and we outgrew that space. And this was in the exact same corner where I sold drugs at, got locked up first time I was arrested and went back in a full circle. It was pretty wild to see that. It's been crazy, man.
You obviously have a bigger mission and you feel like you're the voice for that mission. Can you tell us what that mission is? Can you articulate that mission?
I think my mission is to break down the stereotypes, try to create a more equitable space between people that have been incarcerated and professionals or anyone that has seen us as the worst of the worst. And especially with media today, all you see is crime rates is going up, so many mass shootings, the only people that they really show in the streets is Black people doing wrong things and brown people doing wrong things. People start retaining this internal bias of that we're going to commit a crime. We could walk down the street. I could be with me and a couple of my employees who are Black, and we're walking in, they're looking at us they're about to do something wrong. And that's the reality. And you see it, that people walk around us, I want to break down that stereotype. I want to break down let's create a better feeling inside you. Do I feel like I'm the person to be in this position to spread this message? I don't know. Sometimes I don't feel like it. I've met way better speakers. I've met way smarter individuals. I just been asked to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of times to speak our truth, we've got to be brave. And a lot of the times we get pushback, obviously, from different people who don't agree with us. And it's not the popular opinion, especially if you're trying to break the status quo. What goes through your mind at that time? Like, how do you reconcile with yourself that right now, I don't know whether I'm meant to be the voice, but right now, this is my job and I'm given this opportunity. So let me go through with it.
I think I'm very optimistic. I take advantage of a lot of opportunities that come in front of me, and I just run with it because I don't know where it's going to lead me. I'm only 36 years old. I'm young, and it feels like I've fucking went through a whole bunch of shit, and I have gone through a lot of shit in my life, but just random stuff just lead to other stuff. I'm currently working on a huge documentary with a 4-time Academy Award director whose friend I met on a subway station, who we've been now friends for the last 8 years, who's been following me around with a camera. You just never know where this shit's gonna take you, and so I say yes to almost 99% of the things and see where it goes.
So Congress, you're going to testify in front of Congress. Do you feel the responsibility? What is going through your mind? What kind of stories are you going to land up telling them? Can we get a preview? What is the mission?
So you're getting me anxious right now because I gotta submit a draft today on what the fuck I'm gonna say, and I haven't I just started, drafting it out, and so I'm being in front of those people of power and those people that could really change the trajectory of people that have been in my position. It's hard to just even think about it, and I'm damn, what do I say? What do I do? The first thing I'm gonna say is thank you for this position, for this time that I'm going to be testifying and representing a whole population. It's crazy amount of individuals that have been incarcerated. I think it's over 70 million Americans have been incarcerated.
What percentage of that are non-white?
So 1 in 3 Black men will be incarcerated and 1 in 6 Latino will be incarcerated compared to, and I'm talking about men, and 1 in 17 white men will be incarcerated. We're the minorities in this country. We only make up 50% of the population, but we make up the majority of the prison population.
Yeah.
We could say it's racism. It's real. Racism is real. In New York, there's only 7 neighborhoods that made up 75% of the whole prison population. And in New York City, 95% are Black and brown people in those jails. There's only 5% that may be white or Asian. It's wild to think that. We've been over-policed because it's just been internal racism for a very long time. White people and Black people use drugs at the same exact rate, but we're 6.5 times more likely to get incarcerated for it. So,
how does it feel to be in jail for 6 years for something that is legal now?
It's crazy. I think I'm living in an incredible time where change is actually happening. Yes, I felt unfair and I felt fuck the police, fuck the system my whole life. But now we've had opportunities to really change that trajectory. And especially George Floyd's dramatic incident really internalizing individuals yo, I want to do something. This is crazy. Yeah. This is the reality that's happening, but it got captured in camera. And now America is seeing, the world is seeing, and people want to be part of the movement. But back before then, criminal justice was not sexy. Nobody wanted to save us or talk to us. So now it's people put a black box in their Instagram and think they're supporting, you know what I mean? It's wild to me, but I'm so happy that I'm living in this time. I'm so happy that we could be in the transition from pre.com era to going from flip phones to touchscreen phones to what the world's gonna bring in the next year or so. It's crazy.
So you had a lot of really good examples growing up with persistence, and then you were incarcerated and you've had to find a way to be at one with yourself and find a different perspective and use your voice. What do you set goals for yourself going forward? You said you're just 36 and you're just starting almost. Every time I hear you, it's this is just the start and this is just practice. We don't know what game day is going to look like, but it just feels like practice. Do you imagine what game day looks like?
I don't know. I think like when mentors or people that I like look up to and they question me and they tell me, yo, write this down. Like, what do you want to be in 5 years? And then I'll do it. But like, if it wasn't for that individual to tell me like to do that, I was not going to do that. For me, I'm just like a workaholic type of individual where I'm just like putting my head down and not looking at the bigger picture most of the time. And just like, and it's a problem. And then once I start working, and I hire somebody that could take on that task, then I'm working on the next task. And that's how I've always operated in my life. And then it grows into more people taking on the task. It's hard for me to look at where it's going to be unless somebody says like, yo, stop, write this goal down. Where do you want to be? Like one of my investors, he's like, I want you to send me an email and where do you want ConBody to be in the next 5 years? And I was like, I'll just throw out a number. I was like, I want it to be like a $40 million company. I have like 100 locations. And he's like, send it to me and I'm going to follow up in 5 years.
You know, it's really weird when you put something out there and how it all comes back. I feel that the ones that don't stop to kind of look at, oh, I'm doing that, and they keep going one after the other and then look back and go, oh, wow, look at the trail I've left behind, are probably the ones that don't get caught up in their own way because they're kind of like not thinking about, do you feel that sense of progress that you've made?
Absolutely. I mean, I relate a lot because I remember writing like companies that I wanted to work with when I was in Defy Ventures and shit. And then I'm like throwing away paper because when we started the program, it was like, oh, we're taking notes. I had a little notebook and I'm like, I'm throwing this shit away, but I'm looking over at docs and I'm like, damn, I worked with this company. I worked with this company. I trained JP Morgan. I trained fucking Netflix. It's crazy. I trained people at Vayner and shit that I wrote down became a reality, but I didn't even think about what came a reality until I saw that paperwork and I'm like, oh shit, this is real. Wow. But I don't know how to explain that.
Let's talk about the companies you've managed to work with since coming out of prison. You've started to name a few. Can you name some of those companies?
Yeah, I mean, Netflix, Vice, JP Morgan, RGA, SAP, I don't know. So it's just
been on the Ellen Show.
3 TED Talks. I've been on every media channel that you could think of. Done like CNN, MSNBC, BCC, New York Times, Men's Health, Men's Journal.
What do you think made that possible?
Catching the eyes of the right people. Like randomly catching the eyes of the right people. So when I first started workouts in the park, my strategy was like, so when I was selling drugs, I basically went after like Wall Street, people that were in the bars, fucked up, and I'm like, all right, this is my target market. Not when I started, I was in the streets, but when I changed my strategy and going up to wealthy people, I went after them. And so when I came home, the fitness craze changed in my neighborhood. Nobody was running and jogging down the street back in the day. Nobody was doing that shit. So now I'm like seeing mad women wearing yoga pants, fucking jogging. So I started running next to them. And I remember like running next to a lady and just talking to her. And then like we exchanged contacts. I followed up. We had a conversation. She's like, works at this like fitness blog thing she's doing. The right person read that one. Somebody else wrote another piece. NPR read that piece. Now NPR like contacted me and just a lot of shit, snowball effect and getting in the eyes of the right people randomly.
Do you think it's random?
I think it's a combination of like hard work and luck.
Do you think you make your own luck?
Definitely. Some people are really lucky. They spend $1 on a fucking lotto ticket and they become fucking millionaires. But on the entrepreneurial side, like, it's very hard to like be a success overnight. I have never really met anybody as an overnight success on an entrepreneur side. And like a lot of people think I am, when they read or they see something, they're like, yo, you made it. Like, yo, you did this, that, like, yo, how the fuck you did this shit last night? I'm like, nah, motherfucker, I've been doing this shit for 10 years already. But people don't see that.
A lot of people think that Amplify happened overnight. I hate telling that story because I'm sick of it. But you have an even better story, in my opinion, coming from negative nothing in terms of social, in terms of everything and around you. And you kind of like have gotten to a point now where you just rattle off a whole bunch of names of very credible organizations that want a part of you. What kind of advice would you give someone who is doubting the mission that they have? Because maybe we're going to think of the pushback. How would you sort of advise someone in that position?
My mom's like, one thing she always says is like, if you don't ask, you don't eat, you know? And it's like, just fucking ask. Just ask for it, you know? Like, whether you're like a homeless man that's begging on the street for $1, if he's not asking, he's not gonna eat. He's not gonna get his drugs that he wants to smoke or whatever, or beer that he wants to drink. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you learn if you have a viable product, if you have somebody that wants your shit. I remember going to like the MBA class at Brown University, Ivy League school. I'm talking to all these students. And this kid, you know, had built this incredible technology, fucking put so much time and energy in this thing. And I was like, so who's gonna be a customer? He's like, nah, you know, I haven't asked. I was like, yo, so how do you know if somebody wants that shit? How do you know that you're really solving a problem if nobody's gonna take advantage of it? I advise anybody to like, put yourself out there. It's going to be the scariest shit. It's going to be the most embarrassing thing, but it's temporary. That embarrassing feeling is going to be temporary. Like me going out to the prison yard, like I remember putting you know how they had these fat suits that were pretty big in a few years back. And so what I did, I took a garbage bag and I put a garbage bag on top of all my clothes. And then I put a fucking jacket and I'm running the prison yard and people making fun of me. And it was embarrassing, but it fucking worked. I lost all the weight I needed to lose. I got people to join me too and do the same shit, you know, so just try it.
Bro, thank you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming all the way. This is really cool. And thank you for speaking your truth. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for giving us all the courage by seeing your bravery. I mean, every time I have a conversation with you, I realize that I have a voice inside me and I feel the same things that you feel and everyone else feels. And I don't want to speak up because what if someone has an issue with what I'm saying? And every time I talk to you, I get more energy to kind of go out and do that. So thank you. You're an inspiration.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Now that you've listened to that episode, again, if you want more of Coss, go check him out on Psychology of Entrepreneurship podcast, which I've interviewed Coss and done a really cool audio documentary on his story. Go and listen to that episode after you finish this one. But now I would love to give you 3 small steps that will help you be the voice of change. Number 1, be grateful for the opportunity. What I mean by that is sometimes we get pushed into the limelight and we feel like it's a burden, or we kind of disregard the fact that we've been given the opportunity to be in a position where someone wants to hear our voice. And if that's the case, first of all, be grateful for the fact that you have it. Number 2, get the truth in people's faces and catch the eyes of the right people. Now, make sure that you know who the people care about when you talk about this change that you're voicing, and get the truth in front of them as quickly as you can and make sure that you get the attention of the right people. Number 3, take no for an answer and be the overworked fool. Like, make sure your work ethic outworks other people. And if someone is not the right person for you, take no for an answer. Just move on. And it's covered really in depth in the way Coss explained it. So whatever strategy you pick, it depends on where you're at in your business. So pick out the right strategy. And these small steps will make a huge impact in your podcast and your business journey. If this is the first episode you've listened to all the way to the end, or if you're a regular, thank you. I love that you're here. Please share this with another person that you think would love to also be a profitable podcaster, I suppose. So check out our back catalog on shouldiStartAPodcast.com. Subscribe to the show and give me a review and rating. It really helps me get found. And if you're a business owner, podcaster, and want to join others just like you in a group where we share tactics and ideas on what's working for us when it comes to using our podcast in the best possible way, go to wearepodcast.com/group. It is free. And check out We Are Podcast 2022. It's happening this year. It's almost 6 weeks away, probably less. And it is for business owner podcasters, all focusing on growth. More listeners, more revenue, more credibility. Go to wearepodcast.com and register for a ticket. Stay tuned next week where I'm going to cover having conversations with people you might not agree with, featuring the legend that is Kiramiri Moore. We cover lots, including the different perspectives and different conversations that others give us and the impact of having 2 podcasts. So don't forget to subscribe to the show and get that episode as soon as it gets released. Until then, much love. All right. So you stayed till the end. You found this useful and you have a business or you have a podcast and a business and you kind of want to make it work for you and grow your business using this podcast. Well, you know what? That's something that I have helped thousands of people do and thousands of businesses do in different forms, through an agency in a one-on-one fashion, through a conference, in a group, and obviously in courses and stuff. So please, I want to be able to give you something that you can use to get recurring results in your business using a podcast. We call it the Recurring Results Roadmap. It is years of putting this in practice. It is the blueprint to get results and recurring results using a podcast. If you'd like that, send me a message, ronsley@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your voice, or want to hear from you. So if you've listened to this and you want that roadmap, please send me an email, ronsley@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. Much love. I'll see you in the next episode.